How's it going, everybody? Ty from Tapeless.Archive back again after a very long hiatus, which I do apologize for, but I come bearing a goodie. It is a very nice goodie. The Facebook Marketplace monster has claimed more of my wallet, but for good reason. Let's go ahead and crack this guy up and see what today's goodie is that's worth all this fuss. Inside of this here magical crate, I have a Sony DSR PD150. This is the cleanest example I have ever seen. There's not a scrape, not a scratch, not a scuff, not even dust. I got this for a whopping $300 on Facebook Marketplace. It has relatively low hours on the tape deck, coming in just shy of 300. It was owned by a local ministry who used it to record their Sunday sermons. And I am genuinely so happy to get this. This is going to be my first major Sony other than the piddly little handycams. So coming from a Canon guy, I had to say this really surprised me. Now the mic itself here did not come with the camera. This is a Vid Pro, I believe. A Vid Pro that I use on the XL1 as well. So I figured why not get use out of these here built-in XLR ports. Now I will say this thing does kind of have a slight hiccup to it when it comes to that, being it does not have a built-in microphone. It requires the use of an external microphone that gets routed in through these dual XLR ports, which allow you to have a somewhat superior sound quality setup versus what would be seen on the VX2100, for example, which this shares the same body, sensors, and main electronics with. Alright, first and foremost, let's go ahead and give this guy the attention it deserves. Now, it's very similar to the VX2100, and that being it has the same 1/3 inch pixel, 1/3 inch sensors, each coming in total about 1.14 megapixel total, which is a lot, I know. It's got the same 12 times optical zoom with digital zoom, which I never used. It's got the same LCD screen. The viewfinder's different. The viewfinder itself is actually in black and white. The LCD viewfinder, or the LCD screen that pops out here, is in color. So I found myself using the LCD screen more than the viewfinder just because the colors this thing is able to achieve is absolutely astounding. Coming from a huge Canon fan who loves the color science of them, this honestly amazed me. It blew my mind. Now, as I was saying before, it has no scuffs. It has no dust. It's lived a climate-controlled, indoor-only life in an AV room at a church. Now, I got this on Marketplace for $300. It's a little bit to get a hold of, but you know, once I saw it, I couldn't. So I actually got this mixed up with another one, VoiceOver Ty here. So this had only been up for about 3 weeks, and they did progressively come down on the price, which I had mistaken for another listing, which is understandable. Originally, it came with this case here. Well, not originally, but when I bought it, it came with that case there. The original Sony charger did not come with a microphone. It did not have any batteries, but the sheer shape of this makes it worth every penny. The soft touch rubber is even still just as it was when this camera first released. Speaking of when this camera was released, it was released in the year 2000. It dropped shortly before in Japan than it did in America, as per most Sonys. That's kind of their MO. But it was received really, really, really well, not only by the VX1 2000-2100 community, when it comes to skaters, people who are getting action shots, things like that. This was very highly sought after for local news and broadcasting companies. Now, I say this because it's got more of a professional feel to it compared to the VX2100, which is its direct predecessor. That being the XLR microphone pins. So you can actually have two microphones attached to this to be able to have an interview. Some of these came with a lens hood that featured a built-in shutter. This one did not, however. It does have a built-in camera lens cap, which sets nicely into the hood like so. It uses the Sony NPF series batteries. Currently, I've got a NPF 550 in there, which is a reproduction made by Wasabi Power, which has been sanded down a little bit because it's interchangeable with the Mavica FD7, which is another camera I have in my collection that I use quite extensively. Now, you can get some way higher milliamp hour than the original batteries, which I believe were 1,000 to 1,500, 1,100, something like that milliamp hour batteries at 7.2 volts. This is a 2,600 milliamp battery, and at full charge, I believe I can get just shy of 300 minutes of recording time with a tape deck or with my Firestore, which this can be used with. Now, all of the test footage that you'll see included in this video was not recorded with tape. Actually, quite the opposite. I recorded everything you see here on a Firestore FS4, which this is compatible with. Now, there are a lot of different sources saying that it is incompatible. However, that is false. Many people say that the Firestore is only capable of recording this camcorder when it's in its VCR mode, and that is false. However, you want to make sure if you are using that setup that it is recording on the Firestore. You will receive zero indication of that on your viewfinder or your LCD pop-out screen, which was really confusing for me at first because I had bought this camera and about an hour later I went out and took it to a few car shows. Now, I was very worried that I was not actually recording footage, and me not having tapes for backup, you know, I kind of took the gamble, and I'm very glad I did. I can't get over how well it looked, both, you know, the camera itself into the Firestore being a 1:1 DV ratio. Me putting the USB to Android device would do this thing no justice whatsoever. The difference between the two is night and day. I will say this is definitely a camera where the DV port does shine. It does include your usual S-Video and RCA outputs with both audio channels, which a lot of other handycams do not come with, as well as a mini DV Firewire 400 port. Now, I will say that this little rubber piece here is not too happy with me right now because I have been leaving it open in order to record with the Firestore. I've not found a very good way to remove it without separating the camera, and I do not want to do that, so I will not do that. Adjacent to the AV out port, you have your headphone jack in and your LANC jack as well, followed behind that very closely by your tape deck, which it's a little odd, I will admit. So with the tape deck, when you want to eject the tape, you obviously press the eject button, the camera will power on if it's off, and the tape door will pop open. Well, you have to reach in and push the actual tape mechanism closed, then take the door and close it, right? But that is not all. There is a locking button that you must press in order to make sure the door stays closed. It can be a little annoying. It can be a lot to get used to. Personally, I'm still not used to it, even though I don't really use the tape deck at all, or have not used the tape deck at all, period, since I bought it. However, that is something important to note. Not only is this camera able to record video, it can take photos. I have not done this yet, but it can take photos and save them to a Sony memory stick. It can also save them to a mini DV tape. Now, again, I have not tested this. I'm sure there are other people who have. Personally, I'm not going to use that feature, but it's nice to know it's there. Another thing that's a little odd about this camera, now if I were to compare this to, for example, the GL2, which will be one of its direct competitors, kinda, you'll notice that the GL2 and most of the Canon DV cams have zoom and record controls up on the handle. This does not. Now, I found that very annoying when I was at the car meets yesterday, getting a lot of this test footage, that when I was coming up to cars, I had to kind of hold it low while also having my hand here on the rocker. That is extremely annoying. I really wish that the top handle of this did have controls. I understand why Sony did not do that, kinda. But I'm not gonna gripe about it too badly. Either way, it's a really, really comfortable handle, much more so than the GL2s. I can confirm. It's got these little indentations here for your fingers, which actually sit rather nicely and give you a very sturdy, stable area to hold that's not just a flat bar, so it reduces a lot of that finger fatigue when holding this for long periods of time. This camera also does feature not only automatic controls, but it does feature full manual zoom, focus, and if I'm not mistaken, aperture and iris settings. I have not messed too much with the manual settings, if I'm being completely honest. I'm making this video kind of in a rush because I'm so just excited to talk about this. This is the best camera I've had in my collection condition-wise, and the most expensive price-wise. The next expensive camera I have was $200 less. And it honestly isn't as good. This is well worth it. I cannot stress enough that this is so well worth it. Bouncing back to the microphone situation, again, it does not have a manual microphone here whatsoever, or regular microphone that's standalone with the camera, but it does accept both self-powered and non-self-powered microphones as it puts out a 48-volt phantom power line. This is really nice because with the VidPro it does allow phantom power. Personally, I don't trust it. I hear mixed reviews on whether it works, whether it doesn't, so I just flick the switch on anyway. Whether it works or not, it works or not. But I do know the camera itself does output it. It's just a cheap microphone I don't trust. Now, with the original microphone that these would have shipped with, they would have relied on that 48-volt power as they did not have a self-contained battery system. So as it says here, this is a specific DV cam. Now, this is not the same as mini DVR, although mini DV, not mini DVR, by way of it being slightly higher quality with slightly higher speed of recording. Now, with most average tapes, if you were to use a mini DV tape with DV cam usability, it would only get you about 40 minutes of recording time with a regular tape. However, if you were to use the regular DV setting, it would record about 60 depending on your tape. Now, I know there are some that are longer. I'm just going off of a regular 60-minute tape. That's the easiest way to do the conversion for me. So that is something to note if you are going to use the tape deck. The LCD screen is rather nice because it is a 2.5-inch display, but it can also flip upside down and be tucked back into the body. So if you're using this camera on a tripod and you're sitting next to it rather than on top of it, you can see what it's recording to make sure that your shot's properly in frame, and even still, it looks cool having it open and recording. You know, depending on what your use case for this camera is, personally I'm more of a hobbyist, so it's going to be brought to car meets, car shows, and other things, kind of for not only my own enjoyment, but for the cool factor as well that you often get associated with these camcorders. People love being able to see that screen. It is mesmerizing. I think it looks really cool with it. Personally, I prefer to keep the screen closed to protect it from scrapes and scratches and UV, but it's ultimately made to be used. It's going to be used, but I'm going to do my best to take proper care of it, transport it in the case, make sure it's all clean. Now, in the VCR mode, you have some buttons here on the top underneath of the handle which actually glow. These do not turn on when the regular camera mode is on. I wish they did though, because these look awesome. Truly, they look really, really, really cool. Let's see here. So, going from order from the left top to right and then down to the bottom, you've got your play slow, your record, audio dub, stop, rewind, play, fast forward, and pause. I'm not sure why you'd want slow play, to be completely honest. I have not done enough research about this. Again, I'm just really excited to show this to you guys. As you can tell by our name, that tape deck, it's sitting where it's at and it's ours. I don't plan on using mini DV tapes with them, to be honest, and I can't really find any locally that are worth the price. A lot of the ones on eBay are really starting to climb up, and I'd rather just use the Firestore. It's easier for me to get the footage right off of that HDD, which I'm planning on doing an SD card swap soon because the HDD is unfortunately failing. Now, with going back to the microphone again, if you were to look at the other side, you have this very, very, very cromulent and nice switch panel here, which gives you a pretty good multitude of options when it comes to your sound for not only line 1, but line 2 and mixing both. Now, at the very beginning, starting from left to right, you've got your recording channel select, which allows you to record both channel 1, channel 2, or specifically channel 1. You then have your input level being line, mic, and mic ATT. You have your plus 48 volt setting for input 1, whether that be on or off. And then for your input 2 settings, you only have input level being line, mic, or mic ATT, and your 48 volt on or off, which I have mine off as to not bleed any power that's not needed, which I'm not sure if it does that or not. It's just my own peace of mind and OCD. Also with this camera, for use in outdoors, it's got 2 built-in ND filter settings. They work great, honestly, even being in very sunny settings. I have, even though you're not supposed to, I was recording over at the Philadelphia International Airport today, and I did accidentally get a few shots of some aircraft taking off where the sun was directly in there, and it did not wash out. The ND filter did its job, and it did its job very well. I will say, though, this camera does rely heavily on the ND filters during daytime. Nighttime, though, because it's so sensitive to light, it handles low light insanely well. Attached will be some footage now of me over at Riverwinds recording for the first time with this thing at night, getting some footage of a UPS plane coming in and some of the water in the city. It looks beautiful. Honestly, I say it rivals my XL1, which is what I'm going to base a lot of my comparison here with this camera off of. But I'm just absolutely astounded at the niceness. That's the best way I can say. It is nice. It feels like the body's made of either a really thick or really thin metal in some spots. I will say this does feel a lot like a cast metal. I could be wrong. The ergonomics of the hand holding is really, really nice. It balances really nicely in your hand. It's not like making you feel like you want to flop your wrist. It balances well. You can hold it very nicely. I will say this eye cup is terrible. I don't know if this is the original one. I do believe it is. I have seen these with the larger eye cup that comes out more, and I wish this one had it, because me being a glasses user, if I'm outside, I can't really see through the viewfinder too well. It's just not bright enough to combat the sun. And with it being offset from my face due to my glasses, it's nearly impossible to use in most case scenarios. Yeah, I truly just can't get over how clean this camera is. I really cannot. I've heard a lot of people who have been upset that this camera does not have the standalone built-in microphone. Personally, I've heard the VX series microphones. They're not the worst, they're not the greatest either, and I honestly much rather have the ability to use my own microphone rather than be limited. It also allows me to do interviews as well, like I'd said before, with the 2 lines in versus just the single front microphone at the very top, which is also prone to falling and wobbling and sagging and causing audio issues. So I feel like this is a way better bang for your buck, but it's got an Achilles heel. The Achilles heel with this microphone setup is going to be the actual retainer ring itself. It is flimsy. These are prone to breaking, and you need to be extremely careful and mindful of what your microphone's hitting as to not snap that off. It's held on with 2 screws. The rest of it's just kind of flopped in place. It's very form-fitting to the bulbous ATT setup over here. But that is something you're definitely going to have to watch out for. These are extremely prone to breaking. I mean, they're almost 30 years old. And it's plastic. It's going to be somewhat prone to breaking, especially now. There is one thing I would like to note about the cold shoe mount up at the top, which I find a little odd. I don't really trust that it does this, but you put things in rather than from the back, but from the front. Personally, I don't really like that. It is easier to put stuff in, I will say, but I'm worried that something's just going to slide off if I put it there, whether it be a light or my phone. If I were to run this with the USB setup, which I really don't plan on. Overall, though, I am extremely happy with this camera. The footage is amazing out of it. The colors look wonderful. It's got really nice color science, which I personally was not expecting out of this camera. I have to be kind of honest, I'm not a super big fan of the very sterile blue colorway that a lot of the VXs and Sony Handycams have. This is very warm though. I do really like this. Now, it could be a setting that the previous owners had. There is a lot of customization options within this menu. I will say the jog wheel on this camera I think may be starting to go bad. It likes to skip around a lot, and to be completely honest, I do not want to have to fight with that. I've got everything all down and set up where I want it, so I'm not really going to record footage of me going through the menus with that because it's kind of a pain. But either way, I am more than happy. I am ecstatic to have this, truly. It is, again, I can't harp enough that this is the most expensive camera I have ever bought, and probably ever will when it comes to this hobby. Again, at the end of the day, my main goal isn't to buy the most expensive VX from a reseller on eBay or have it all tricked out with clear panels and all the flashy cool stuff. I want to preserve these. I want to have these preserved for the next generation of people that are tech enthusiasts. You know, I want to keep it as it was, as much as I can, as much as possible. I want this to last. And if that includes not modifying it, then so be it. I will say, even with the small battery, it gets a very, very, very nice runtime. Me using the Firestore FS4 with the 850 milliamp battery, it does not have much runtime, especially with the HDD in it now, and the fan drawing and draining that battery very badly. I'm curious to see what the battery percentage and runtime gain is going to be when I convert it to an SD card. Hopefully they can match, because the FS4 dies way before this even thinks about it. I mean, I have recorded with this camera quite extensively, and I've honestly not gone below half battery, which I'm extremely pleased with. I can know that this battery that I have, which will be linked in the description, works very well with this camera. It's small, it's not heavy, and the camera comes in just shy of 3.5 pounds. I believe it was 3.3 when I weighed it, 3.5 with the microphone that I have on there and the battery. I did not weigh it with a tape because, again, I do not have one. Either way, I really wish I could have had a better experience. I mean, down from finding it to meeting up with the sellers, who are an amazing, wonderful older couple who run a ministry over in Delaware, which is right next door to me. Well, not literally next door, but I'm a state over. They were awesome people. They were super happy to sell it to somebody who's going to use it, and not, you know, somebody who's going to resell it off and, you know, bash it, do whatever. You know, I'm very happy to have connected with them. And that, you know, that is a big part of the hobby that no one really talks about, especially the people who only buy their cameras off of eBay, and the sea of untested, I like to call it, from the depth. When you buy these off of Facebook Marketplace, for example, you're usually dealing with the people who originally bought it. These have recorded some of their major life memories, from weddings to Christmases. These have seen people that are no longer here anymore, and oftentimes, for somebody to see that not only is there an interest, but there's an interest in keeping it alive and using it and making sure that it sees even more of a lifetime, it makes a lot of older people extremely sentimental and happy. I've been asked before, how do I find such nice and good sellers on Facebook Marketplace? And to be completely honest, you gotta go for the older people. As predatory and as rude as that may sound, oftentimes they don't want to sell their stuff just for the money, but they want to sell their things to make sure somebody else enjoys them, which I do quite a lot. So this has been a short and not super thorough review of the Sony DSR PD150. I am so happy that I have this, truly. This is my gift to myself for graduating nursing school. I love this thing. It is awesome. It is amazing. I love it. I cannot wait to use this thing more. I am going to be semi-ish retiring the XL1. It's heavy. It's heavy, and every time I bring it into malls to record with friends, I get weird looks from, security and stores, and they think we're professional YouTubers here to cause a ruckus, and I feel like this is a lot more low-key and unnoticeable. Again, I'm Ty from Tapeless.Archive. Thank you very much for sticking around watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. It is free for you, but helps a lot for me. I'm going to have a way more structured and scheduled upload set, especially now that I'm no longer in school. I can devote more time towards this hobby and maybe make it a little more than a hobby, fingers crossed. Again, thank you all for watching, and have a very good day.
Yo, what's going on, man?
Here, where'd you get this? Please don't shove that in there.
Please let me put it in.
Okay, so I should get that one then?
Yeah.